Hi, and welcome to this talk about the new now. First, I want to say to the organization in Jerusalem, thank you for getting us all together in this very difficult time. I understand that you have had difficulties and we appreciate what you're doing. So my name is Albert Bonnier. I'm sitting in Stockholm in my home, and I'm a publisher at the Albert Bonnier Publishing House. It is not named after me. It's named after my grandfather's grandfather, who founded the company 1837. I'm also the alumni of the I also belong to the alumni group of Sevbirger 1993. And this is before cell phone time, so I'm sure that you have no idea when it was. Today, I am the moderator of this interesting panel, and I have a very good spread of people and countries here. We have first Sophie de Closet from Edition Fayard in Paris. I think you are in Paris.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay. And in Toronto, we have Sarah MacLachlan, who is the former president of Canada's largest independent publishing house, House of Anansi. And finally, we have in Sao Paulo, I suppose you're in Sao Paulo, in Brazil, Luiz Schwarcz, who is the founder and the publisher of Companhia Letras and an author of a bestseller. I want to start with why we are here right now. What are we doing right now? Who will take the decisions that we have to take, and what will be the decisions? So I wanted to start with Sophie. What would you do right now when you know what has happened during this last year, and what would be the most important decisions to take for the company?
Thank you, Albert. Thank you, everybody. I think one of the hardest decisions that we have to make at Fayard, at least, is how many titles are we going to publish, and what are we going to do with all the books that we had to postpone last year, and how can we cope with these delays in publication? How many titles can the market handle? How many new projects, and how do we choose very carefully the new projects regarding, the offer, which is going to increase and explode. And so there is this big problem, because at the same time, we saw that the online retailers saw their market shares going up and up during the last year, and it's not going to go down, at least in France. So that was a big change. And so this implies increased bestsellerization. And so what sells even more, but the mid-list is really going down, and the difficult titles are just, it's as if they don't exist, which is a big struggle for us.
So, and the same question to Louis, what would you say would be your most important decision to take in this time and for the fall that is coming, knowing what you know about what has happened this year? You are muted.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Albert, and hello to all my colleagues. The situation in Brazil is a bit different than what Sophie said. The growth of the online sales was really very, very significant. But here, the online retailers, they don't sell front lists very well. What happened is that two big chains of books that were the bestsellers or front list titles were sold went bankrupt before COVID. And now I think our challenge is to help the small bookstores. We did this since the first day of COVID. We helped them to create their online sales. We delivered book for them, and we even paid the salaries of the workers in the bookstores, of the small bookstores, for 6 months. I think now when they are going to be able. Brazil is a little bit delayed in the way out of COVID. You probably hear our president is very against social isolation and against vaccine and things like that. So we are late. I think we will have to continue to help the small bookstores, even when they will be completely open. They are not still open for the whole day. And I think our big challenge will be to balance a little bit and have the diversity that the small booksellers represent in terms of the sales of the catalog. The shift to online benefited backlist publishers here in Brazil, like Companhia. We grew 140% this year and 30% last year, and we are not so much delayed. It was a very good time, unfortunately or fortunately, for sales. Our big problem was people, the workers, the health of the workers, as the COVID was so strong here. We had a worker that died and 3 authors that died. So that were our main challenges and how I am facing things from now.
Okay, thank you very much, Louis. And I go to Sarah and I ask you the same question. What would be your most important decisions to take now, right now?
The landscape in Canada is, I think all countries have had different approaches and different solutions to dealing with COVID. We have always had very strong support for the arts from the government, both the federal and provincial level. And during COVID, the government really stepped up. So when we first shut down, we were very anxious about how we were going to sell a book at all and how we were going to come up with the money to keep our staff. And the government funding bodies came to the fore and they advanced us the money they would normally be giving us quite a bit later in the year. And then they implemented a program of topping up lost sales. So if your sales dipped, I think the number was 50%, they would top it up to get you to 80 or 90. And so that allowed us to maintain our publishing program and to keep full employment as we went, into our houses. And coming out of the COVID, and we're not as bad as Brazil, but we're not as advanced as the UK or the US or Israel at this point. It's a very slow return to business. The government has now given independent booksellers a bucket of money, $32 million, to help them to combat the big heavyweight Amazons, for example, who can sell direct to consumer. Because a lot of the independent booksellers in the period of the last 15 months have been able to transform their business and to create e-commerce, if you will. And so the government is going to further help them to do that, to battle against the dominance of Amazon. And so as a result, our market has remained relatively stable. We've had to, downsize our budgets, but not hugely. And but like Sophie was saying, I think the big challenge will be, how do we launch debuts if we can't get authors, face to face with readers and festivals and things like that. And Backlist has been great for us. The children's program that we have has worked to a point. Our sales were largely institutionally driven in that category, and with schools and libraries shutting down and not purchasing, we took a hit there. So we recognize these sort of touch points in our publishing programs, but I will say that the government support has made things a little less dire than we certainly initially thought they were going to be.
Okay. I can say in Sweden, we haven't had a very, not really a lockdown. It's been regulated, but we haven't had, the bookstores have been open all the time. So the sales have been relatively, in the bookstores, have been relatively successful. It's been pretty good, actually. And then, of course, the digitalization is the key point in this whole crisis. And in Sweden, the digitalization has been quite advanced. Most people in this society know how to use the digital instruments, and that has made the sales of everything digital actually. And as books has always been in the forefront of that, it has been a tremendous successful year digitally. And so my next question is actually, what is the level of digitalization in your markets, and how do you see the kind of kick-off of the digital world during this year? I mean, lots of people think that this pandemic has been the big accelerator for a digital world, and how has that somehow changed your organization or your structure in the company? There, you can. Who else wants to start? It's up to you. Just grab it.
I would say that for us, every book we create a digital copy of that book, and we sell it to all of the appropriate outlets. In fact, Michael Tamblin, who's the CEO of Kobo, is a good friend of mine on our board. And he has told me that of course it was extraordinary for them what happened. Particularly, I think, Luiz, in Brazil, they had just a huge burst of sales digitally. In Canada, it didn't work that way. I mean, I think probably digital sales for us are certainly less than 20%, maybe even only 10%. People are still very devoted to print books.
We are smaller than that. Digital sales represent for us only 10% of our sales. It's growing, but what is really growing is, like what Sophie said, is the online sale of physical books. This is really growing tremendously, and refers to what I said, the danger to the physical bookstores. It's quite big. Part of the problem is that the physical bookstores were not prepared to a digital world. They were not digitalized. They don't speak to their clients through the internet. They only speak physically, and this is something that cannot exist anymore for any kind of business. And that's why we created this manual and try to help them to understand this new now, that even selling physically, you need to be digital. And that's the big thing here.
It's a bit the same in France, just like you, Luiz. Ebooks represent only 6 to 8% of our business, but 1 book out of 5 at Fayard is sold online. But it's mainly physical books sold on online retailers. And obviously, everybody had to learn how to promote book and to get in touch with authors and readers through the digital instrument. But what I experienced, but maybe I really wonder how it is in your countries, is the shift to the digital instrument. So I'm not talking about the sale of books, but the social media everywhere to get your opinion. It's as if in a time of crisis, when people get upset and anxious, and they should be, because it's very scary times, people got also very angry. And so on the social media, the global debate went mad in a way. And so books and everybody being in their bubbles, and not getting a sense of the global conversation or the main focus of a democracy, or what it should be, thinking against oneself and trying to think with this debate with people who don't think like you do. And so what I saw and experienced is, like in nonfiction, you've got this tribal publishing, when, angry books that are statements for angry readers sold more and more. And the difficulty that it is today to get experts, sensible historians or thinkers, or people who want, to put things in context, or try and have a kind of mild and clever and brilliant and scientific way to put things and to put the debate. It's as if it can't go through at some point the filter of the social media. And so you've got those very, very angry people publishing books saying, well, I'm very angry that way. People buy it as a statement. And that, I think, is really something I fear, because at Fayard we've got this very balanced and nonfiction, serious nonfiction list. And I fear that, you know, if we don't get back to rationality in the global debate, as publishers, it's going to be harder and harder to publish and promote authors that are sensible.
But you mean that there's lots of angry authors out there right now?
Well, authors, I don't know. There are a lot of angry people wanting to say to the world how angry and furious and against whatever they are. You know.
But then you mean that the tone of the social media also changes the way or the tone of the published books?
Yes,
yeah.
Because it's hard to get a calm debate, to have a complex thoughts, you know, and to put it out there through the social media. You know, you can't sum up everything in 140 signs. And so, and it doesn't stick to the screen. See what I mean? So yeah. I think it's really hard to, when you don't have the independent bookstores, you don't have the festivals, you don't have the calm of the society to welcome complex thinking, then I think it's hard as a publisher to promote those books.
Well, I also think that this past year has been very political. I mean, what has happened will reflect in each country's politics, and I would think that that will also reflect in the flood of books that comes out, and some of them are of course very, very angry when it comes to the politics. But I would like to ask you all, in terms of social media and in this digital world that we now are in, have you as publishers seen that you communicate with your authors in another way than you did before? And if that is so, how has that changed your relation?
Well, the fact that you cannot meet the authors personally, of course, create a different world. And also the big question to the future, will we all work in the office in the future at the same level? We are preparing some studies to probably 2 days of home office per week in average to all the employees, some only 1, some 3, depending on and the relation with the authors where was always through Zoom or things like that. It's not the same, and I defend the physical relation and meeting and things like that. I am very old-fashioned, but I see that many of my people of my team are completely adapted to have all the relations through a digital format, and authors have also the importance of authors participating in social media, and we discussing their books in social media became even bigger. But I don't relate this exactly to COVID. I think it was something that was going already in this direction, and we need to know how to manage these new tools to publish. Anyway, that's how I see the thing.
I think for a country like ours, which is enormous, you know, Canada's big and very underpopulated, what we found that was interesting was that a lot of our staff they sort of, you know, Toronto is the center of the publishing, and yet in COVID, it allowed staff to get out of the, you know, the COVID hotspot, go back to their roots if they came from BC and Vancouver, or currently actually I'm in the Maritimes in Nova Scotia. We now have staff spread across the country working virtually. And I'm very interested to see how we work together once we can reopen the office and people can come in. But I think the other thing that it has allowed is for other areas to be explored and exploited by our new editor who's in Vancouver, our new publisher who's here on the East Coast. And so connecting with as things open up, connecting with writers in their areas. And so I see it for us as being beneficial that we will have a new kind of pan-Canadian workforce, if you will, and the ability to engage with writers who we wouldn't normally, even in the center, which is Toronto. So writers out in Vancouver, writers in the Maritimes, writers in the North.
We have the same thing in Sweden. We are also a very big country and very underpopulated. And so people have also got, they traveled back to their roots, even here. And so you are all spread out, actually. We have people from north and south, and no one is in the building. So it's been totally empty for a year. And that's interesting to see what is going to be the next level of this. How many are you? How much will that change the kind of nitty-gritty things in the company? I mean, you always kind of bind the house together with people in different meetings and all that. And that it is very physical. I mean, the whole industry is very personal driven in a way. And so it's going to be a very different way of communicating and getting the decisions done. And I don't know how you see it, but we can see that when we open up now, which we probably will in the September, it will definitely be a much smaller group of people than it was before.
Actually, it's funny because there is this paradox, because on one hand, people were happy to have time to read and to be elsewhere and to learn how to work differently. But on the other hand, people here are craving to go back to the office.
Yeah.
I mean, they feel so miserable, and all the youngsters, they've got very small apartments and they feel very lonely, and you need to spend a lot of time and attention to get them, not getting to this, I don't know, sad, I think, just mainly sad. And at the same time, during the first lockdown, which was quite a shock for everybody in France, actually, I felt like being a teenager again, which was very nice, because I spent all my time on the phone. And even with authors whom I usually don't call that often, they would call me every day just to say, how are you doing? And usually we don't. I mean, we see each other twice a month. I don't know. We, send a text. And suddenly it was as if, because there was no contact anywhere, you had to have a lot of digital contact. And so I spent all my days like, as if I was 15, in my bedroom on the phone, talking to friends, and how are you doing, and blah, 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 all the time, which is really, really weird, because I never do that much when in usual times. And now we are trying to respect the rules. So I'm at the office, and I've been living in my office since the end of the first lockdown. But people are just trying to desperately go back to the office. The rule now is 1 day per week per person. And so I said, you can split the day in 2 half days.
Can I ask you, is it 1 day a week that you're home, or that you're in the office?
No, in the office. It's
okay.
1 day a week in the office. But if I said to the team, if you have a book that you need to grab, something to print, obviously you can come back, and they're all there all the time. So now I have something to print. I said, it's been 6 hours. It doesn't take that long, and they don't want to go, because they're just with their mug of coffee, looking desperately for someone to send. The authors, they all come by, and they won't move out of your office, because they crave for human interactions.
Yeah, people want to meet.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Louis, did you have something to say or no?
No, I think what I have to tell that what we had to offer during the worst times of the COVID was psychiatric help to a lot of employees.
Yeah.
Companhia offered this, and it was used by quite a number of people. So I agree with Sophie. The isolation, it's very hard for many people, but at the same time, there are others that liked the experience of working from home. So that's why we are now doing kind of, it's not a survey that we ask the employees what they want, but the responsibles of any department will say how they want to work at the moment that we will return. Our return will be the latest of all, from unfortunately, but at the moment, no one apart from, I think there are 3 or 4 people only going to the office because they need to work from there, but our offices are completely empty, unfortunately.
I have some questions that come in from people who are listening to us. And there's a question about how are you as a publishing house gearing up to face cancel culture? Anyone who has an opinion on this can just start to answer.
As the proud publisher of Amanda Gormans in French, I can take that because we had to face the debate on the translation, which is not exactly cancel culture, but was a new perspective because in France we don't have sensitive readers and we didn't have cultural appropriation debate. But I don't know, I think we have to resist and not to give in. It's related to what I said earlier about being angry. I mean, I included cancel culture defender in the angry people in their bubbles in social media when you can't have a reasonable debate.
Yeah, we have problems with it because and of course in the house you have people who are very, kind of, they dominate in the department of communication, for instance, in the PR department. It goes very fast to either take a standpoint for one side or another, and you suddenly have a very strong opposition against someone who is maybe your author and who has just been published by the publisher or by the house, and that could create problems within the company, which I have seen several of these cases actually, and it's you can. I think those angry people kind of gets into the system somehow, and not only with the book or the books. So they get into the system through the social media, and that can disturb a lot of a lot of the publishing actually. So it's
Albert, I don't know. Can you share one example of what happened, or is it?
Yeah, well, we had a person who was involved in kind of very dirty things in the red light district,
Okay.
and he did things he shouldn't have done at all, and it became news in the media, and people started to hate him, and he published a lot of books within one of the companies in the group. And that started, of course, a kind of a hate situation, which was not really relevant to what he's done. But the problem is that you can't really limit it. There is no limitation to what kind of hate people can create. So it is a difficult question.
And so, what did you do as a publisher and a boss?
We threw out all of his books actually, and he's banned and he's never coming back. But it's so we couldn't
That
cope.
was very bad. What he did.
It was very
that
bad.
was bad.
Yeah. Either it was we that was too weak or he was too bad, but it was that was the end of it. And,
Okay.
but it you know, there are limits to what you have to do, but it is I think you're in the you're pointing at the problem when you talk about these angry people, because they start this whole aggression in a way, and the aggression can become over the top. And in the end, you take decisions that you wouldn't have done like 10 years ago or something.
Yeah.
I think we have to try to protect the publishing from the polarization of the social media, but this is not easy, or it's quite impossible. We have no problems till now from inside, and I am seeing that the books published, the very radical books published, especially in Brazil, books by the extreme right, the followers of Bolsonaro and things like that, are now going down, and there is more space for rational books and serious books. There was a moment where the bestseller list was filled by radical books, especially here, the stream books. And maybe the decline of the support of the president is also influencing that these very angry voices are not appearing in books, but they are still very strong in the social media.
Yeah. I have another question from the audience, and this is it's about the literature actually. How are you approaching new acquisitions, debut authors? What messages are you giving to agents referring submissions? I don't know if any of you have thought about this, but new acquisitions in this time. As I see it, I think we study and we go through these proposals in the same way actually, and it's not that we need the book fairs to take on new books from other countries, but I don't know how you see it.
Our acquisition policy has remained pretty much the same through the whole period. I mean, I know we have to think when we take on debut fiction really seriously about how we're going to get those people out in the world in a way that will be relevant and allow them to sell. And that I think that's the biggest challenge. We're also looking at beefing up our nonfiction, because we're finding that to be a category that is weak in our list, and we need to increase it, because people are looking for answers to things. They're looking to read about things, to Sophie's point about we try to represent the rational, thoughtful, informed point of view. And I think as publishers, it's our responsibility to find those books and to put them out. So those would be sort of two areas. One, a weak and sort of scary point, but something we continue to do. And the other, something we really want to advance and beef up.
Yeah.
What I wanted to say is that it's very funny, because in the moments where the publishing market is under a crisis, the prices of the acquisitions go high. They don't go down, because the publishers need so much for bestseller or things like that the auctions get more common and things like that. But we didn't face a crisis with COVID, I have to say. Only personal crisis, emotional crisis. And what is interesting that I wanted to put here as part of my answer is that we were growing in nonfiction. Nonfiction was becoming so big, and fiction was more difficult, new novels or new authors, first novels. And suddenly, in the last 3 months or 4 months, maybe, we began to see that some fiction, new fiction, Brazilian authors, we began to sell better, and there is now a kind of interest, a higher interest in fiction. And I was speaking with Madeline McIntosh and my colleagues of Penguin Random House in the US, and they saw that in their case, commercial fiction, not in my case, but in their case, commercial fiction began to grow this year. So I don't have any explanation for that. My explanation was ready to explain why nonfiction was selling better, but I didn't expect that this year COVID situation was going to open the doors again to fiction. What I think it's very.
Louis, we have seen the same thing in Sweden actually, and so it's been the fiction that has been the most selling division in the bookstores, and the nonfiction book that has been selling more than anything else is the Obama memoirs, of course. But other than that, it hasn't been a very nonfiction year for us.
Yeah.
But I also think that yeah, sorry.
People want to go to imagination and to other situations, get out a bit of the situation and dream a bit, and fiction is a good way to that.
But yeah, Sophie.
Sorry. No, in France we have this situation with when all those books have been postponed. So a few publishers announced that they wouldn't take new projects from now on. We have not, but it's true that we are very careful when it comes to foreign acquisitions. And we see that our colleagues are doing the same, because it's really hard to sell foreign rights from books or authors who usually sell abroad. So I think that everybody is careful when it comes to acquisition in foreign language, maybe. Except from those big books, and the auctions are crazy. But for, the books where you say, oh, I'm not so sure, but maybe it's not that expensive. Well, this year, because we've got so many to publish, we would postpone.
Do you see that? Do you think that we don't travel? I mean, we usually are quite a traveling group of people, and now we are sitting in our homes for a year. Do you think that this will reflect that it will be less interesting to publish books from other countries, and in that way will it be more local? Does that mean that people does not connect to other countries, other problems, other difficulties in a way? Yeah,
I think that everybody's mind has narrowed in somehow.
Yeah.
And we as publishers, because we don't travel, we don't have those fairs, this excitement, the informal conversation late at night with, oh, I saw that book, it's amazing, blah, blah, blah. Then you've got the obvious books, and sometimes you regret and say, oh my gosh, I should not have drunk that much and listened to my friend who was in acquisition. Well, you don't have those, but you don't have also the unexpected books.
Right.
And so you've got the obvious one, the books from the authors you have published, and it's like that for the online. I really wonder how online retailers can promote backlists or for you, because to me, this fair excitement, it's like in independent bookstores. When you enter an independent bookstores, usually you go out with the books that you did not expect, or you didn't even know it existed. When you buy online, you get the books that you wanted when you entered your computer. So it's not the unexpected books or the debut or the nice cover, you know, that catch your eyes when you see it on the table. You don't have that online. So I don't understand how come that it helps backlist or debut or, you know, more fragile books in your markets. I really wonder.
So, well, you talked about fairs, and that's interesting to see what will happen now, because this is the year then when we didn't go to Frankfurt and we didn't go to London, and what do you think will be the outcome of this? Do you think that this is really a beginning of something new, or will we go back to what we always have done? What is your thoughts about this?
I think that we will travel a little bit less, but we will still travel, I think, and book fairs will exist, will not stop existing, I hope, and because it's so important that we meet people. But we will not be, I think, we will not be so crazy to buy during the fairs, I hope. This was already a movement that we learned that in the book fairs is where we make the biggest mistakes.
Well, yeah.
Yes,
absolutely.
that's for sure.
So I think that will help. I just want to answer Sophie. It's very strange, Sophie, because Amazon, it's here and in the United States or other countries, is known as a backlist seller. They don't know how to promote new books. They buy very little of the new titles till the algorithm show that they will sell. So the big bestseller companies, that's not my case. I have imprints of bestsellers, but the roots of Companhia are others. They needed the big chain of bookstores, because when you enter in the Amazon, you enter wanting it's true. You enter in what you want to buy. So, for example, now we are selling huge amounts of YA backlist titles. They were bestsellers, but like a series of the Red Queen or things like that. I can't remember even the name, but they sold 100,000 copies in the past, and now another 100 as they are like 2 years old or things like that. That's what is selling in Amazon. And not when I just published a book by the former Brazilian president. You know, Amazon gets 300 copies to check, and then if it sells, they buy more. So they are really here not specialized in selling very quickly new titles. If the title shows, if the algorithm say it's selling, then they will continue.
Okay.
But they know how to work about your taste, your profile, and they go and show you an old title. That's how they sell more. But the big chain of like the Brazilian Barnes and Nobles, they are bankrupt, and that was the place for the big bestseller. And thanks God, the independent chains or the independent bookstores are surviving, most of them with some help of ours, and they sell all kinds of good books. Not only, well, a bestseller is a good book too, but they sell all kinds of books. I had a Freudian lapse here.
In Canada, and I think in America too, we had a big shop local movement that took over sort of the internet, the airwaves, encouraging people to go to their independents and inquire, look at their websites to get inspiration on buying new. and different titles. And that really seemed to take off, which is, I think, largely why and how the Canadian government has decided to support independent bookstores and becoming more visible
That's
through
interesting.
online offerings. And as for traveling, yes, let's go back to the fairs, but I think we're also in a moment of generational shift. And it will be very interesting to see how younger people, not that we're old, but we're older, who are coming into leadership positions in publishing will change the way things operate. And I'm curious to see that because I think a new day is dawning, and COVID will be the marker point for that change.
Yeah, talking about the younger people, I mean the people coming into the business. Do you see that COVID has kind of hindered people to come in? I mean, has it been more difficult to get it has been more difficult to get a job. Do you think we lost people on the way? And is this something that you will, do something about when this now ends?
I think that we're going to see, I don't think we've seen it yet because I don't think we've had the bigger opening, and there've been articles written about it. I think there's going to be a shift. I think people are in the process now of deciding, what do I want to do with my life? I've been sitting at home for 15 months, working in this remote, strange way. Surveys say that 20% of people want to keep working at home. 60% would like a hybrid, and another 20 want to go right back into the office. And so I think we're going to see a kind of shaking out of the workforce, and who knows what it's going to look like. I think it'll be a hard thing to coordinate going forward because now we're all extremely focused and we do Zoom meetings and we know we've got a meeting and we know we're going to accomplish this. And I was amazed at how laser focused things became once we were out of the office. So now we'll be back in the office, but we'll also be working with people on Zoom, and making sure lines of communication stay open and people are informed is going to be challenging, I think.
Yeah.
And we will need a different kind of people sometime. Let's say if the shift to online is really, it is a reality. For example, we have to study the changes in our sales force. Mm-hmm. You don't need exactly the same kind of people working on sales that visit bookstores, and of course we will need them, but we will need.
Do the sales force still visit bookstores in Brazil?
During the COVID, but
even before the COVID, I mean,
yes. They used to visit, or they had the contact directly. But for example, for a shift to online, you need more data-driven people.
Yeah, that's true.
You have to have people that know to discuss the algorithms with the Amazon and all this. It's different.
Yeah, I got now the information that we only have a minute left. So if there's anything you want to say, where it's now or never. Yes, you have like.
That sounds very dramatic. There's something exceptional, we're all going to freeze.
I'd love to see you personally as soon as possible.
Yes. Yeah, I think also that there are limitations to this Zoom technique. You don't get to really feel the other person in person, and you need to do that somehow. But I thought it was very interesting to meet all of you. I thought it was a great idea to get this group of people together, and I thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you in Frankfurt.
Yeah, maybe.